Okay. Are you ready to go? Can I start?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. I hope that's going to work. Should do. Okay. Okay.
Amazing.
I think I'll start at the first slide. Sorry about that. I was asked to talk about Transition Thrive, something about how it came to be and how we kind of conceptualized it and how it came, how we rolled it out. So here's just some thoughts and some ideas about what I think Thrive is and what its job is in the transition movement. So first of all, it's based on the health check, which I think most of you probably should be familiar with. It's this idea that there are some very fundamental pieces of transition that we see over and over again in every transition group. And the health check is a self-reflective tool, I guess. I think it works best when it's done in a group of people who are doing the work themselves and who can sit together and examine together what they do well, what they can improve, and to start to see maybe some of the gaps and some of the things that they might want to improve. So there's a whole process in the training where people do the health check before the training starts, and then the rest of the course is really an emergent process of which generates the kind of content of the Thrive, and of course part of the emergent process is sharing good food and wine. So this is an example of one part of the health check, which is practical projects. These are some of the questions, and we ask people to fill in this star diagram, which gives you a very good visual sense of what of your strengths and weaknesses as a project, as a transition group. And then the rest of it, like I said, it's the facilitators are there to facilitate an exploration of the topics that emerge, and it's important to feel that sense that you don't have to have all the answers as a facilitator. You're just there to bring out the answers that are there in the group. And as always in transition, there's everyone's an expert. Everyone is has some knowledge that they can contribute, and your job there as a facilitator is to draw that out of them and to bring that out of the group. This is an example of a Thrive training I did in Barcelona with Juan, and one tool that we employed quite regularly in Thrive was we did this visual facilitation. So we set up this very, very big, long piece of paper, maybe 5 meters long. And then we invited people to draw on it, and we had somebody who was kind of holding the visual facilitation, and that would just give us a visual record and something to help people to integrate and engage with the material. And of course, with Transition Thrive, the 2 questions that I find comes up with every transition group is, how do we attract more people to our events, and how do we get those who come to get involved? The questions revolve around things like relevance. Are you relevant to your community? Are you using the sort of language that people can connect to? Is your group vibe something that people want to be a part of? Are you embedded in network in your community? Are you representative and inclusive? And then something I'm curious about, as we work on evolutions to this material is the municipalities and transitions work on fluxes. So, this sort of thing that groups can be exclusive and they set boundaries, and how can we work in a sort of boundaryless, permissionless environment. Some of the tools and structures that I've tended to have up my sleeve, like I think most facilitators, you have your facilitators toolkit. So like I said, the whole thing is emergent. So you want to address what are the actual questions and issues that people are bringing to this training. But the kind of things is that sort of fishbowls, reflective listening, appreciative inquiry, visual mapping, and so on. There's I can make this available, and I'm sure I'm not quite sure what toolkits you have and whether you have them available, but anyway, if there's something missing, I'm very happy to supply it, and I'm sure the people who are delivering Thrive have some of these and others as a way of inviting people into a way of looking at this material together. So that's just a kind of brief overview of what Transition Thrive is. Everyone is different. There's no one way to do it. It's an emergent process. It's based on the health check. And some of the questions that have come up for me around doing it is that, well, given that the health check is a kind of self-referential system, we've kind of stated there's a kind of given in that these pieces of transition, these things like practical projects, good groups, community involvement, and so on are important parts of the transition process. And sometimes I've just, questions come up in my mind. Well, what if they're not? What if there's something else that makes transition work and doesn't? Or are we missing something? So I think it's might be an interesting project for people to take on, is to start looking at, well, what are the things, and to go back and question some of those initial assumptions, and perhaps there are things that we've missed, and perhaps there's things that need updating, and I think that's almost certainly the case. And one thing that I've been doing, because I'm actually in the middle of yeah. Sorry, am I going too fast?
Can you speak just a little? Yes, if you can speak just a little bit slower, so it's going to be easier for front, please.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So one thing that I've been doing is I'm doing a transition launch training at the moment, and I've reframed transition, and I've reframed it like this. And the question is, what if transition was a process to enable local groups to stay with the trouble? This way of thinking, or this frame, has come from something that I'm exploring at the moment, which is this staying with the trouble, in which Donna Haraway is proposing that we are in a time that is not the Anthropocene, is not the Capitalocene, but is the Thurlocene that she calls it, which is the time of trouble and change and crisis. And for me, that is a really, really interesting framing for transition, because what then that enables or sort of sets up for transition groups is this possibility to, as a group, because I think you need to hold these things, as always, this sort of the difficulty is to be able to hold that difficulty together, and hold the difficult times and the changing times and the challenges, the challenges that many groups are already facing around climate change and around climate instabilities, the sort of challenges that the pandemic has thrown up, and some of the work that, for instance, transition groups in the US have done to help their communities to stay safe and to be looked after during the pandemic, when many local governments were either very slow or ineffectual. So if you look at transition as that kind of a process, then what you start to see is this sort of reframe. So the sort of pieces of transition, pieces of, well, obviously delivering it online as a kind of launch online, and each part of the transition process goes from transition to staying with the trouble, and then kind of this really, why do we need to do transition is turns into defining the trouble. Visioning becomes sensing into the trouble. Community involvement is about sharing the trouble. Good groups is holding the trouble together, and what comes up when you start to do that, and how that process works. Networking and partnering is holding the trouble with other groups. And inner transition is something about being with or embodying the trouble. And then going forth is the kind of the tensions that emerge with staying with the trouble. So that for me is, I think, in these times, and certainly here in Britain post XR, when the whole tenor of our societal engagement with climate change, with the social tensions, the threats to democracy, and so on that have been thrown up. This question of being able to stay with the trouble feels a really potent one and a really generative one. It's something that I think also comes out of deep adaptation and the work of Giangrande. And for me, this is the sort of process that generates what I would call active hope or generative hope, rather than just blind optimism on one hand or despair on the other. So all I can say is that for many people struggle with this, the whole idea that we're in trouble. But for people who really get that and feel that, this is a really welcome, from my experience so far anyway, that there's a really welcome framing of how to speak about and how to hold the whole transition process. So that's about it. That's where I'm at with it so far. So thank you very much. And back over to you, Monica. Or do I hand over to Dawn? I'm not quite sure. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, you can test too.
Yeah.
On.
Okay.
Thank you, Naresh, very much. There are so many questions.
Please don't remember to speak slowly because Fran needs to translate us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, they have many challenges. Today is to speak slowly and stay in 10 minutes. Not really, go on. Keep calm.
I'll do my best. Feel free to interrupt me if I'm going too fast. So hello, good to be with you all. Yeah, I'm really inspired by the idea of Thrive. I think we've done a really good job as a movement, mapping out the early stages of the transition process, but maybe not as good a job mapping out the later stages. I was talking about this with Naresh a couple weeks ago, that in the early days, transition talked about the A to C of transition. And what is the D to Z, or at least the D to maybe M. So when I heard that Naresh and Sophie were going to be traveling to the US to deliver Thrive back in 2012, I traveled across the country to take the first Thrive training in the US. And you can see Naresh here on the right side of the frame. And that was a great experience. And Thrive was not offered again in the US after that point. So in 2018, we started to do a redesign of Thrive 6 years later, and to adapt it to an online format. We had already done that for transition launch and for effective collaboration training, and Thrive seemed the logical next step. So I want to share a little bit about our process so you can see what we did, but also I think this is a process that could be used for redesigning any training in a collaborative way. So the first thing we did was to secure some funding for this work, which I think is really important so that trainers feel well supported in doing this work. So we got a $3,200 seed grant from Transition Network. Thank you, Transition Network, and distributed that among the group that was doing this redesign. The second step was to bring together a group of trainers. And in our case, this was 2 US and 2 Canadian trainers, myself and Rebecca Blanco in the US, and Michelle Calusi and Sally Ludwig from Canada. And then we identified what are the core needs of transition leaders relative to Thrive. And we put out a survey to the international network, and we got 115 responses. We were very pleased with that, from 16 different countries. So we received all those responses and sorted them and tried to make sense of what people were saying was needed. From there, we reviewed the existing Thrive curriculum, and Naresh was kind to send us a number of different course schedules from different times that Thrive was taught in different places, PowerPoint slide decks, other resources. So we went through all of that to see what was relevant. And then established the session topics and the learning objectives that we wanted to see in the course as a whole. So we decided to go with 8 sessions, which is how we were doing launch online, organized around the 5 stages of transition from the transition companion, whereas our launch online is more organized around the 7 ingredients of transition, the transition animal, as Naresh talked about. Then we adapted to our chosen format, which was a guided online course with recorded lectures, discussion forums, supplemental resources, and live meetings. We distributed the development of the modules among trainers. So we didn't decide or design the modules all together, but we let trainers with different expertise design different modules and then bring it back to the group for feedback. Discussed the course description that we were using for promotion, which I'll share with you in a minute, and the finances. So we decided on $120 per participant, and that trainers would get paid $500 per session. And then finally, we approved all the modules as a group. And this entire process took about 11 months, almost a year, from December 2018 to November 2019 when the course started. So that was the process that we used. And I just want to share with you a little bit what we came up with. I'd be happy to provide anyone with access to the course. It's still all available online if you want to look at it yourself. But this is how we structured it. So the first session we called Maps for the Transition Journey. Provided an overview of the 5 stages of transition. We asked all participants to take the transition health check to identify their strengths and weaknesses. And we did some activity around envisioning what a thriving transition initiative might look like. In the second session, we focused on cultivating individual and collective wholeness, using primarily 2 models, Joanna Macy's Truth Mandala and Thomas Kilman's conflict modes. Both looking at our own individual shadow and the different ways that people show up in groups and how we can help people participate in our groups in a more collaborative way. Session 3, running successful practical projects. I designed a module called Anatomy of a Great First Project. We shared examples of early stage transition projects that have been tried and tested in different places. And we talked about general project design and management, and participants workshopped their projects and got feedback from the group. The next session was Reaching Beyond the Choir, talking about diffusion of innovations theory and tipping points. We looked specifically at developing brand, narrative, stories, and metrics, and an overall communication strategy using various platforms. The next session was on building capacity and momentum. We covered some fundraising for transition, organizational structure, becoming a formal organization. What does that mean for transition? Building coalitions and running multifaceted campaigns. Session 6 on system changing strategies. Used Ken Wilber's 4 quadrants. Look at the inner and the outer, individual and collective aspects of our work. Talked about some systems thinking and some more advanced transition projects like Reconomy and municipalities in transition. Session 7, we called In It for Life. And this was looking at the challenges to inner resilience, learning zones, how we can stay in our stretch zone as opposed to our comfort zone or our danger zone, and individual and group practices for avoiding burnout. And then finally, we had a closing session where we reviewed the key points from the course, facilitated action planning for participants. Participants went through a peer input process on their action plan, and we had time for final questions and answers. So this is the course in a nutshell that we came up with. So this is the description that we used to promote the course. And I think everybody can see it, so I'm not going to read it, but maybe Fran wants to translate it into Spanish for our Spanish friends. So just maybe take a minute to read over this. I'm just watching Fran to see when she's done translating. So yeah, for English speakers, we were really framing this around its relation to launch. And that's something that I think might need to be changed. Actually, we had a fairly low turnout, which was surprising. We had 17 people sign up, but 115 people responded to our survey. And normally we get, maybe somewhere between 35 and 115 participants for our online trainings. So wondering somewhat why we had a low turnout there. So thinking about next steps, where might it go from here? A number of issues, starting with the low turnout and some suggestions of potential actions. So I would consider rebranding the training like we did for Launch Online. We called it Regenerative Leadership for Social Change, and that kind of opened things up to a wider audience beyond transition. And eliminating launch as a prerequisite. That might be part of the reason we got the low turnout. Currently, the Thrive Online is North American centric and only available in English. We might want to consider convening an international group of trainers to produce the next version of this. We heard from participants that there was too much to process in too short a time. So I would suggest, instead of holding sessions every week like we did, holding them every 2 weeks or every month to give more time to process. A few things about the course content. In retrospect, sessions 2 on cultivating the collective genius and session 7 on In It for Life seem to be out of order to me. I would put the session on avoiding burnout earlier in the training and move the cultivating collective genius, which is a kind of a more advanced topic, to later in the training. Also heard that session 5 has building capacity and momentum, had too much in it. It took me, I don't know, an hour and a half to give the whole lecture, which is too long. So maybe deleting the information about the coalitions and campaigns and focusing specifically on the fundraising and structure, which seem to be the crucial elements. And session 6, we heard there were a lot of good things in that session on systems changing strategies, but it wasn't cohesive. So it was hard for people to kind of wrap their heads around it. And I've used David Holmgren's permaculture principles for teaching about strategic thinking for transition in the past, and I think it might work well here to bring some more structure. And then finally, the course is currently only available in a guided online format. I would suggest that we could reverse engineer this to an in-person training. I think that's valuable. And to maybe test it out a couple more times in the guided online format before creating an online self-guided course that could make it available to more people. So I hope that has been helpful. And I look forward to everybody's questions.
Yes, now we have a moment for clarification questions. Very amazing. Pretty good, Dawn. Thank you for this, Naresh. Thank you for this too. And I know we have one question that Naresh did here. Did you have a forum space for Thrive Online for PPTs to interact and build relationship between sessions?
Yes. So we use a platform called Thinkific. I can put the link in the chat.
Okay.
And it has a discussion forum built in. So there were, for every session, there were at least one or two different forums, and everybody in the course contributed their answers to those questions, and people replied to each other's answers. So that's how we did it. And if people want to have access to the course on Thinkific, you can just email me to let me know, and I'll put my
Amazing.
email in the chat.
Do we have any question? Do you have for our presenters? Somebody is asking if you use breakout rooms, Don.
Yeah, for the live meetings by Zoom, it seems that that's very, very popular. People feel much more comfortable talking in small groups. So yeah, we use breakout groups a lot.
Yes, I see Rua would like to ask some question. Please, Rua.
Yeah, actually, I have a couple of questions. I'll go slow. Lo siento. Two are for Dawn. One, how much do you consider the having fun together during these trainings to make it not all so didactic and, I mean, breakout groups are good, but is there some kind of liveliness about it? And the other question for you is when will the self-guided Thrive training be ready? And then I have a question for Naresh.
I don't know when the self-guided Thrive will be ready. I think that maybe that's something, for the international community to decide, rather than, just doing it as Transition US. So I don't know. And yeah, I think it is important that people feel a kind of sense of community in the course. It's more difficult to do that online, but it really makes a difference for people's experience and for how many people show up to the live meetings. If they're not fun, people won't come. So yeah, I think it's hard to make fun doing Zoom, but hopefully people find transition fun.
Great, thanks. And for Naresh, I'm going to pick up Donna Haraway's book, Staying with the Trouble. This sounds really fascinating. I wonder how you, if you can give a succinct, clear definition of trouble. I kind of heard it in the, I get kind of it, but just a little recap.
Yeah, thank you for your question. But I'm afraid I can't. multi-layered, multifaceted set of predicaments, I guess, that we find ourselves in. And what I most appreciate about Donna Haraway is it's not an easy read at all, but don't let that put you off, because she creates language and creates concepts that has forced me again and again to really engage with those concepts in a different sort of way, is the only thing I can describe it. And in doing so, calls into question the kind of, I don't know, dominant mental conceptual mode of thinking and being with. And in doing so, you know, she just, because she draws in such a multidisciplinary, I think she might be a biologist or an ecologist. She wrote something called the Cyborg Manifesto about 30 years ago. So she's clearly been a really deep thinker in this space for many, many years. And she brings up just a wealth of different disciplines and different ways of thinking together that just forces me, anyway, to into a fundamental rethink of you know, who I am, what our culture is, which her proposal is that that's what's necessary, is that, and this whole thing is that if we are able, somebody's cell going on. If we are able to stay with the trouble, then out of that can emerge some of the, perhaps some ways of doing and being that that maybe would not have emerged otherwise, and could provide us with some different ways of being and different ways of thinking or being with or feeling. It's just it's such a fundamental critique of our culture and our way of thinking that I think is really needed. I hope that I don't know if that answers your question, but
sort of, and thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I would like to call you to join on breakout rooms. And no, first I have one question, but it's for Josue. Josue, can I ask you one thing that is just thinking about, oh, you have a question, Josue, sorry.
Yes, I did wrote it in a chat, as I just have to leave because I have another meeting beginning. I just wanted to see if there is a way to share a bit more in details with Naresh, because I heard that he did build new content for trainings that we are doing in Belgium too, and we did also build new content, and I would like to see if there is a possibility to share more in details than here is an overview. But I don't have the time to listen to the answer because I have to go now. So I thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so now we are supposed to have a 5 minutes bio break. Anais is telling me. And then we are supposed to go to breakout rooms. Yeah, I'm not saying the questions now because I think you're going to forget while you're doing your things. So I will tell you when you come back, okay? So take a coffee, a cup of water, and...
Oh, oh. What a harvest document. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it helps so much. It helps us so much. You don't imagine when you write it that I can read it. Thank you.
So we would like to allow the collective wisdom to emerge through us, and hopefully if you can also bring the voice of your communities, because it's in us somehow. There are different countries here. So we would like to do this harvest round with the ahas, like what really show up in your heart, mind today that you want to share with all. And we go co-creating and sharing everything that is alive in you now. So if you want to share first one of the rooms that we're together, very welcome. You can say it like this with your hand or put it in the chat. I'm happy to see again faces that have been together with us in the different circles of training, the inner. Isa.
I can talk about my health check in my local group that was really powerful. My group just make a quantic jump after doing the health check. We could see, we could map and where we have been, where we haven't been, where were the hidden conflicts, the small pains that didn't come up during the day-by-day job. So was one of the things that made my group be what my group is now. It was like a new word. It was really okay. It was an aha moment for us, the host check.
Thank you, Isa. I remind that Fran is translating. Recuerdo que Fran está traduciendo para que vayan ahí al botón de interpretación para buscarlo. And I see, Gabriela, you open your mic. You would like to share some ahas? Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
What more is alive from you? I see also Mary from Australia. So nice to have you here. Such different cultures in this movement. Esther from Spain, happy to see you again. For some months we didn't saw each other. From all these 4 questions that we know, it's not enough time to be able to go deep in it. It's just like a pathway to bring up conversations. What do you think is needed in your territory? What else can we do in the different communities that you want to share? Saida.
Yes, I was having this insight while we were talking in our group, and it came to me with the experience that I have here in Brazil, which I'm not so close to the tribe community here in Brazil. I'm learning with them, but I do remember a little bit when I was in the United States, and I remember also the difficulty that the groups have. Brazil is like popcorn, like we start talking about something and a lot of groups start because they are very easily inspired. And then I start thinking, so what would make them go on? Because in Brazil it's easy to spread, but it's more difficult to have something that make them grow. And I was thinking about this plant that you buy in a store that comes with lots of fertilizer, then you bring home, and then they don't receive the same fertilizer, and then they don't thrive. So that's the idea. So I'm not talking about something new, but what came to me was like, do you know when we learn and we talk about visioning and backcasting, that we have to imagine the end and then start coming back. On this coming back, I think it's missing the middle part. Is the middle part. Like we know where we want to get, we know how to popcorn, and the tribe for me is that middle path that usually is related, of course, with strengthening relationships and working from the heart and working from many other tools that the tribe brings. At the same time, I was absolutely curious also to know or to understand more than to know why only 17 responded to Dawn, because it's like, I always see United States being so successful in all their plannings and in all their responses, in all their courses. I so much appreciate, Dawn, the quality of your clarity, the way that you plan your work, your courses, the way you share with your trainers, and the way you present to us. You know, it's fantastic. And my husband is American, so I can see both qualities in both countries. And I think the tribe needs to have this marriage between how the mind works in its effectiveness, connected to the heart that embraces relationships. Like we say yoga, you know, or Tai Chi, or whatever we call yin and yang, it's also like the heart and the mind coming together. So it seems to me that that's the strengthening of what's in the future. But we need to know what is in the future. Seems to be, from what Naresh said to me, is not the end where we don't have problems with the oil, we don't have climate change. No, the end is how to live with the problem, but now. So it's interesting. And just something is missing. But anyway, if it comes, I'll bring it up, but was here in my realm and I lost it. But that's the most important thing I wanted to share. It's still just popping, nothing concrete, but just to flourish a little bit.
Yeah, thank you very much, Saida, for that. I see in the chat that many people are resonating with you. I was sharing in the breakout rooms also with Naresh that in Spanish, in Latin America, we do not have the tribe. It never arrived here. And I hear you Brazilian girls know a little bit and have the link with the US, and maybe something very beautiful would be to bring it to the other languages and to find a way of this collaboration, because I see we are kind of bridges from different countries, languages, cultures, continents. And this is happening here now. It's amazing. And it gets my skin like, because we are bridges. And as you said, Saida, the building the relationships is the bridge to make it take longer. It's not the first moment, it's how we keep it going. And this is relationships. And from my experience, I look every group and we are having so much challenges in group dynamics that is also present in the Thrive and the conflict transformation. And I believe personally that we still don't know how to be human somehow, how to be together and stay together, even though tensions are there. So, and again, it's all so much interrelated, because this shared governance that is dealing with tensions, and we release tensions to keep working together. And it's all here for us. So thank you very much. And if there is another aha.
I'd like to say something.
Monica.
Carol, I'd like to share something that Carol said that's interesting, that she said, yes, perhaps what's missing is encouragement and training for the middle. Starting is exciting and full of promise. There is an end goal, but things falter at the middle. I totally agree. Yeah, the most challenging normally in groups, the most challenged times are this middle, right? Because, go on, Don.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just whenever
No, it's okay. It's just.
Yeah, we talked in our group quite a bit about the feeling of being stuck. And I think that, you know, looking at this 5-stage process, and there's other ways to describe it, but I find it to be useful. It's kind of like it's like you're entering a whole new world. You know, there's a certain kind of conditions around you when you're starting out. And then, you know, as you get into deepening and connecting and building, there's different opportunities, there's different challenges, the structure of your group might be different, the things that you're focused on might be different, the kind of skills that you need might be different. And so I think kind of showing how that evolution happens is very useful, because if we keep applying the same structure and the same people and the same communication strategies at the starting out phase, we're going to stay stuck in the starting out phase. So yeah, that was a little bit of an aha.
I was thinking one thing that I was supposed to say, and I just stopped, and is that what I see, I stayed in many different groups, not only of transition. I always work in groups, in communities and everything. What I see is there are some needs that we have to be aware that people have when they are in the group. They need to understand that they are learning, they are growing together, but they need to see that. That's not easy to see. Other thing is that it has to be funny. It has to be good to be together. It has to be a good moment for you, because if it's not, you're not going, right? So we have to effort ourselves to have a good time together. Yes, we have challenges. I'm not saying that we have conflicts, but how be happy together. And this is something that we used to work with in Brazil Hub. I get very happy about that. So Isabella wants to say something.
I would include art, food, and crying together. You see, when you have a group where you are able to, oh no, today, let's do some art stuff, let's draw together.
Let's cry together.
Let's cry together. We have cried and we have cooked together a lot. And for me, it's this social tissue that you need to for you to stay with a group. My group has 11 years. We are friends. We support each other. Even when some of us is not in a good place, we look and say, oh, she's not okay. She's not like that. And we have this kind of feeling to look and, well, how can we help you? So it's something really, amorosidade. How do I say amorosidade, Zaida? It's
loveliness.
Loveliness. I don't know if love, it's something that to really care, because for me, transition is about relationship. The rest is work that you do, being paid, not being paid, because we are here to do stuff. So when you take care of relationship, really take care of relationship and learn how to look to diversity, I think groups thrive. That's it.
I would just compliment for a moment. What is to work with celebration, fun, art? It's something that brings us easily to the heart. And as we come to the heart, we are more open. We feel integrated with the other. We have no boundaries. What put boundaries is when we are in our minds or in our thoughts and beliefs about, I have to be competent, I need to know, I cannot not know, which is totally the opposite of the you theory. Let's go to the ground of not knowing and we together will know. But it's so embedded. The society that created this world that we are now is also the society that taught us that we need to know. So it's like in when I was speaking with my group, I was saying, and this is the real transition. When we think we are working on Thrive to develop the groups that are gonna work in transition, for me, we are working in transition because we are raising consciousness, and raising consciousness is what transition is about. It's kind of crazy, but that's, for me, that's what it is. So I wonder if we keep working with trainers, and the trainers are the ones that are really changing it, and trainers and groups and initiatives, not what the initiatives are going to do, but the initiatives itself are the cells that starts with themselves that transition, which is obvious what it is.
What?
So I want to add another little piece here, and that is that part of being stuck is keep talking about us being stuck. You know, instead of remembering and maybe taking time, because some people will have been in the initiative from the beginning and some are newer, to kind of have a storytelling about why we began and what successes we've had, and to feel really good about the things that we've done, which will give us the inspiration to keep going. Because otherwise, I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy to say, well, we're stalled, you know, we're not going anywhere, or all of these transition initiatives, they're just stalling. And so remembering what we've done that's good, and what Isabella was talking about, how we've created relationships, we know each other well. That's a really important thing. So many people live isolated lives, right? They don't know their neighbors. They don't get to have good conversations. They don't get to cry with each other. And so let's cheer that we have this opportunity here, and then help wherever we can to keep people inspired.
Mm-hmm. Thank
There
you.
is one thing that you said, Rua, that's so interesting, because we are reading the active hope together in the hub. And there you talk about the story that you are telling. You know, we have 3 stories happening. One is the business as usual. Other one is everything is falling down. And the other one is the big change. So where are you on this story? Where do you want to be? The 3 of them are happening. So I prefer the third one. So that's what we are talking about, you know. If I can choose, and I want to choose this one, you know. And when you talk about what is this active hope, is that you go to that. You don't need to know if it's gonna happen. You don't need to know if you have to go do things to go there. And so I feel more happy thinking this way.
Thank you, Monica. And something that comes to me also as Chilean hub, because most of the time I'm with a global hat, but when I go to the local, and we have not been having easy times here together. And one of the difficult aspects here was that the volunteer time was not easy for many of the guys that start growing up, start having children, and keep doing the work that is a lot without having resources when you are needing them was not easy. And hearing you, and also hearing the Brazilian hub, because I want to celebrate the Brazilian hub is doing a lot in volunteer for years. And what I sense from you is the love that you build between you is giving you a capital that is not economic capital. And if we really acknowledge that we need a lot of stuff more than the money, and we can have this between us, is the glue, the real glue to stay together. So I'm bringing this with us, Silva, in our big challenge in the side of the hub to find a way, and Fran also is here, to find a way to wake up love finally. Because if love is there, I believe a lot of resilience comes. And we are needing it here. So if you can send love for us, please.
Well, I think of something. I think the biggest opportunity for that is the time of COVID. Because when we were doing and launching Gaia Education in 2005, we're talking about a chapter that would talk about regeneration after disaster. It's right here. It was here already, but nobody could see. Now affected our bodies directly. And I have right now my brother-in-law dying in the hospital. I have my sister with COVID. I have many people in my family now. I already lost 3 people. So now is the time. Now is the time. The disaster is here. So we need to learn that what we need is not to transform out there. We need to transform to create these cells. What if each one of these tribe groups are cells in themselves, as I see that Granja Viana is in Brazil? You know, just as an example, what if this is what we need? And by doing by ourselves, then we can be a model and an example and then expand outside. Because it feels to me that sometimes we're feeding a group so this group can feed others. But it feels like the group itself needs to be fed, right? So among themselves, something that they can thrive as a group, so they can be a model by osmosis, maybe not by training.
Yeah, I really think that we are, I don't know, we are happy together, we are having a good time, but we need to honor time. So we really need to wrap up. And yeah, but I want you to, if you can, to help us with our checkout, maybe write on the chat, how was this session for you? And what do you want to take from here to your people, to your group? Here I have Zaida is inspired. I love to see Naresh. Your fans, Naresh. Love everything. So many inspiring people together and so many friends. What a gift. Thank you. Wonderful. My group is meeting tonight. I will bring all this love for them. Yeah, wow. Transition in Brazil is so full of love and hope. Energizing will take a Transition Australia hub, a new Energize for tapping into resource out there. Thank you so much. Great to see many loved transitioners. Very inspiring work from US 10. Balance between head, heart, and hands, not just one of these. Brazilian will get together today too. Thank you, Don, so much. Thank you, Naresh, so much. I hope we can be together. We will have another webinar, the last one of this series of 6.
No.
Only of this time. So we are supposed to do much more because I believe that people want, and we love to be together. So let's do more things and exchange more information. Let's think a little bit about how to do it. And yeah. And yeah, if you can, we will have a feedback form that's there on the chat. If you can put some words there, it can help us to go on and to make better work in another webinars. And yeah, I don't know, Anna, do we have anything else? I think.
Well, thank you, Monica and all. And we are sharing for the trainers and the representatives of the hub that I see some here. We are sharing a document through the training circle, which is changing the policies of our relationship with trainer. And we're shifting from more certifying a way of relating with the trainers to acknowledge other aligned organizations that are doing similar things. And a bit more is there. So we really appreciate your feedback in this document that Monica has shared in the COP of trainers. And we are sharing also in the Hub Slack. All your representatives has this information. And we want to receive all the voices to bring you to this shift that we're having in the training circle.
Yeah, I have only one more thing. I want to thank Silvana, Lisa, and Francisca, Dawn, Naresh, and everybody that was between, Isabella, that was between this work. And thank you for all your work together. Yeah. Now you can open your mic and say in your language, maybe, goodbye
Photo?
and love.
Can it possible or
Yeah.
not?
What?
Can we take a photo? It's okay for
Yes,
you?
good.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. Good.
1, 2, 3.
Banana.
Amazing.
Lindo. Thank you. Gracias,
Thank
gracias.
you.
Gracias.